Pikmin 2. I don't like Pikmin 2, and I don't like that I don't like Pikmin 2. I wish I liked Pikmin 2, but I just don't. In fact, I kind of hate this game, and any Pikmin fans are already gonna know why. But before we get into that, why don't we talk about the things I do like about Pikmin 2, because Pikmin 1 was a great foundation, but it definitely had some problems and some room for improvement. And thankfully, Pikmin 2 does expand upon the Pikmin formula very nicely in a lot of great ways. Of course, for starters, we have two new additional types of Pikmin. We now have Purple Pikmin, which have the strength of 10 Pikmin, so normally something that would take 20 Pikmin to carry, just 2 Purples would be able to do it. They're also even more effective in combat than Reds are, being able to deal even more damage to enemies, and if you throw them at enemies, they can stun them, which is incredibly powerful. Purple Pikmin also weigh more than average Pikmin, which can be used to weigh down certain objects, which is used for specific kinds of puzzles in the game. However, as a trade-off for all of these strengths, Purple Pikmin are really, really slow. In fact, a Purple Pikmin that doesn't have a flower is so slow that running around with them can be quite a pain in the ass, actually. But regardless of that one weakness, Purple Pikmin are still incredibly powerful, and you definitely want to take advantage of them. And then additionally, we have White Pikmin, who are kind of like the polar opposite of Purples. These guys are very, very fast, and they are also immune to poison, allowing them to interact with things and go to areas that other Pikmin can't. And they are also poisonous themselves, so if an enemy eats a White Pikmin, then it will take a huge chunk of damage, which is pretty cool. Additionally, White Pikmin have those red eyes that allow them to see underground so they can dig up treasures that other Pikmin would not be able to find. I'll talk about treasure more in a little bit, but first, another thing about these two Pikmin types that's very different than the other Pikmin types is that you cannot grow them in the same way you can Reds, Blues, and Yellows, because these two types of Pikmin do not have an onion, so there's no way to sprout new ones of them. Instead, the way you get purples and whites is, in the first Pikmin game, there were these flowers that you could throw Pikmin into and it would convert them to a different type of Pikmin. And these flowers are the only way to get purples and whites. And these flowers to create purples and whites are not things you're going to find all over the place. They're kind of rare, which means your access to purple and white Pikmin populations is extremely limited compared to the other Pikmin types, which adds way more consequences to losing Pikmin of these two varieties. You know, if we're talking about red Pikmin, if you lose 10, that's nothing. Even if you lose 100, that's not really that big of a deal. You'll probably have plenty of them. But losing 10 purples is absolutely colossal. That could be your entire purple population, and you're not going to be able to get that back super easily. And I love this. It adds more of that tension that I think the first Pikmin was lacking, but it doesn't overdo it. You know, it's still forgiving with your main 3 types of Pikmin, but these 2 new ones, they're very precious, they're very valuable, so losing them is something you absolutely want to avoid, which then works really well with the fact that purples are your best combat Pikmin, so you're encouraged to throw them into the fray, but it's also risking their lives, their precious, valuable lives. Same goes for white Pikmin. They have that benefit where if they get eaten, they deal massive damage to enemies, but you don't want them to get eaten, so it's something you kind of want to avoid, but maybe sometimes it's a good idea to do. You kind of have to weigh the value of your white Pikmin and decide whether or not it's worth sacrificing them. It's a very good design. I really like the choices with purple and white Pikmin and how they work. Additionally, a new thing they've added to Pikmin 2 are sprays. There are 2 types of sprays. You have Ultra Spicy Spray and Ultra Bitter Spray, and these are used as temporary buffs to help you out in combat. Ultra Spicy Spray increases the damage of your Pikmin temporarily, and Ultra Bitter Spray temporarily freezes an enemy in place, allowing you to attack them for free. And these are very nice because not only are they an extra tool to use in combat to help you with more difficult enemy encounters, but they're also a resource for you to consider. You can occasionally find these sprays just hidden around as little secret bonuses, but the primary way you get access to these sprays is by collecting berries, and that adds a nice thing that can be a distraction from more productive things, because you can spend Pikmin's time collecting these berries to eventually get you another spray, but that's time they could be spending doing something else. It adds nicely to the time management aspect of Pikmin that we now have a risk-reward thing there of, is it worth spending some Pikmin's time to get some sprays, or would it be better to just not bother? Those kinds of decisions did not really exist in the first Pikmin, and I think they go wonderfully with the whole system here. But by far, the best thing that they have added to Pikmin 2 is Louie, the second playable character. You now have 2 captains that you can play as, and you can swap between them at any time, and this just opens up a whole universe of possibilities. For a game like Pikmin that's all about multitasking and optimization, the ability to be in 2 places at once, doing 2 different things at once, it adds so much to the formula. Now, instead of having to run back and forth across the whole map or constantly return to your main base, you can swap between your 2 characters and have them tackle different jobs. And there's a number of different ways you can go about this. You can leave one of your captains back at home base, so that way once your Pikmin are all busy out in the field, you can instantly swap to your other character and grab all the Pikmin that are already back at base and immediately head back out right away without having to trek your way back. Or you could take both captains with you and then eventually split them up to tackle different things in nearby areas. Or you could split up your Pikmin types across your different captains. You can have one captain take a bunch of blues and go out into the water, and then have the other captain take all the other Pikmin and do stuff on land. Another nice thing that they've added with these multiple captains is you can lie down, and if you do that, then your Pikmin are automatically going to carry you back to base, which just adds for more of that multitasking potential. You send a captain out to go do something, and then once he's done everything he needs to do, you just have his Pikmin carry him back to base while you switch over to the other captain and do some other stuff. The possibilities created by having a second playable character are so fantastic, and it's the most natural, elegant way to expand upon the Pikmin formula and add even further depth to it. Just like with many of the things from Pikmin 1, it's something that you can not take advantage of if you don't want to and just basically ignore your second captain. But if you do try to take advantage of your second captain, you can get way faster and do things so much more efficiently. And with all of these wonderful things added to the gameplay, in many ways Pikmin 2 can be described as just Pikmin 1 again, but just better. Because the core idea of Pikmin 2 is still pretty much the same. You got your days, your limited amount of time, but this time around, instead of collecting ship parts, you are collecting treasures, which adds to your total money count, and you're trying to hit 10,000 money in order to complete the game. Though 10,000 isn't really the end of the game, there's tons of post-game stuff you can do, so there's actually a lot more than that, which is pretty cool. But, unfortunately, when I say that Pikmin 2 is Pikmin 1 again, I kind of mean that literally, because one of the unfortunate things about Pikmin 2 is that the maps are the same maps from Pikmin 1, which is a really strange choice to me. I have a bit of an idea of why they may have done this, but I'm still not a huge fan of the decision, though, thankfully, they did remix the levels quite significantly to make them feel fairly different. You start in different places, there are new enemies around, a lot of them have different visuals to help them feel different, and they've also modified the terrain in some cases, like adding water to areas where there wasn't, or adding new barricades or various different things. In fact, it might even take a while for a player to realize that they're reusing the same maps from Pikmin 1, but you will definitely notice eventually, and it's kind of just like, oh, that's kind of lame. I mean, considering Pikmin 1 and 2 are so insanely similar to each other, and the first game is so short, Pikmin 2 kind of in some ways doesn't even feel like a sequel. It feels like the rest of Pikmin 1. And in that context, I guess it's kind of okay to take the same levels and remix them a bit for the second playthrough or whatever, if you want to look at it that way. So yeah, a little bit unfortunate, but not the hugest problem in the world. The game is still plenty fun. However, while I have been doing pretty much nothing but praising Pikmin 2 up to this point, as I said before, I don't like this game, and now I want to start talking about why that is, because while Pikmin 2 improved upon Pikmin 1 in many ways, in a number of ways it has also harmed the Pikmin formula, and I think overall the game ends up harming it more than it ends up helping it. Let's start with the small stuff. First is a problem that did exist in Pikmin 1, but it is so much worse in Pikmin 2. When you go to throw your Pikmin, you can obviously select which Pikmin type you want to throw. But the way it works is extremely awkward, because when you select a Pikmin type, that doesn't actually determine what Pikmin you're going to throw. what Pikmin you're going to throw is actually determined by what Pikmin is physically closest to your character when you hit the button. Selecting a Pikmin type, all it does is rearrange the organization of your Pikmins to put that type closer to the front. And in general, this mostly works, but the problem comes in when you start throwing Pikmin really rapidly, because while you're doing that, your remaining Pikmin are going to be shuffling around to get into their next position, and when that happens, a lot of times, Pikmin can end up getting shoved around and things can get out of order, and you'll end up accidentally throwing a Pikmin type that you didn't want to throw. And this can cause a lot of annoyance in relatively small ways, but it can also cause major problems in some very big ways. You know, you can start throwing reds and yellows into the water when you mean to be throwing blues, or you could just be sending the wrong Pikmin type to grab some spoils. You know, you want some yellows to take this back to their onion, but then some purples and some reds get mixed in there, and now they're taking it to the wrong place. And then that's going to force you to have to recall everybody, and then throw your Pikmin back on the thing, and it just wastes time. Those are the smaller problems that this thing can create, but the bigger issues can be things like you throw white Pikmin at enemies when you mean to be throwing purples at them, and then your whites get eaten. Or one thing they've added to Pikmin 2 is electricity, and yellows are immune to electricity, but any other Pikmin type will instantly be killed by it, and so maybe there's an electric enemy and you're throwing some yellows at it to fight it, but all your formation gets messed up, and now you start throwing all your other Pikmin at that enemy, and they all get instantly killed, and it's like, fucking Christ, man, this is so goddamn annoying. I have no idea why they made Pikmin throwing work like this. They should have just made it so that when you select a Pikmin type, that is the only type of Pikmin you will throw. Because the current system they have in Pikmin 1 and 2 can be extremely frustrating, and this can be especially a problem with purples in Pikmin 2 because they're so much slower than other Pikmin, so oftentimes when they're trying to run back up to the front to get thrown, then another Pikmin is going to get there before them, and you'll switch off, and then it's a whole giant mess. And having to sift through 5 Pikmin types can just make this even more awkward, so that is definitely a problem. It was a problem in the first game, but it's much, much worse here. But if you want to talk about problems that are exclusive to Pikmin 2, I have to talk about this game's horrible tutorialization. Anytime you encounter something for the first time, the game is going to stop, and then this little robot is going to yammer on for 1,000 years, going on and on and on, explaining what this thing is in way overly long-winded ways, oftentimes explaining things that you already figured out or you learned from the first game or are just really obvious and intuitive and did not need tutorialization. And this happens constantly. The first several hours of Pikmin 2 is just stop and start all the time, constantly getting interrupted for this stupid robot to tell you shit you already know. It is a fucking nightmare. This is like one of the worst possible ways you can do tutorialization in a game. It might not sound that bad, but play Pikmin 2 for yourself and tell me you do not get annoyed by how often you get interrupted in this game. And those problems are unfortunate and a bit annoying, and if those were the only problems that Pikmin 2 had, I'd easily be able to forgive them and this game would be fantastic. But now we have to talk about the real problem with Pikmin 2, the thing that y'all have been waiting for, the caves. The caves are one of the most divisive things I've probably ever seen in a video game, because there are a number of people that really love Pikmin 2. It might even be their favorite Pikmin game. But then there are a lot of people that absolutely hate Pikmin 2, and the caves are entirely the deciding factor here. Whether or not you like the caves means everything, and for me, I fall on the side of hating the caves. What the caves are in Pikmin 2 are a series of procedurally generated dungeons, and you can find the entrances to caves in the normal levels, and you can hop down and begin your spelunking into a cave. And the caves completely change up the gameplay formula of Pikmin to something entirely different. First of all, there's no timer when you're in the caves. Time just stops. You can go into a cave and spend 4 hours in there, and when you come out, it will be the exact same time on the exact same day. And instead of being one large area with a bunch of stuff spread around, the caves instead are level-based, and your objective is pretty much just to get to the end of them. Each floor might have a treasure or two for you to collect, but primarily your goal is to just get to the next floor and keep going and going and going until you reach the end. And by the way, the caves is the only place you're going to find the flowers to create purple and white Pikmin. That's why they can be so rare. In fact, you can't really gain Pikmin at all when you're in a caves because there's no onions. When your Pikmin take your spoils back to the little ship here, all it does is give you money, which means that the caves kind of have a bit of a survival aspect to them. You have to make it to the bottom of the cave, but you also have to make it there with an army still standing, so that way you can fight the boss at the end. The caves kind of recontextualize the elements of Pikmin into a completely different kind of game. Rather than it being about multitasking and time management, now it's really about that army of 100 Pikmin, and you need to take that army and get through these caves without dying. And dying in the caves is most certainly something that can happen. Pikmin 2 can be an absolutely brutal game, and it is not at all uncommon to go into a cave with 100 Pikmin, and at some point, you are literally down to 0. That happened to me during this playthrough, and I just had to leave the cave because I couldn't keep playing it. In fact, there are some tougher things that you can encounter in these caves that can wipe out your entire army in a single attack if you're not careful. And I can imagine some people being very turned off by the difficulty of the caves, but I actually don't have a problem with that. I think it's kind of cool that they are this punishing and this brutal. It adds that kind of tension and pressure that didn't really exist in Pikmin 1. You know, in Pikmin 1, you lose 100 Pikmin, okay, I'll just go grab some more from the onion. In Pikmin 2, you're in a cave, you lose 100 Pikmin, and you're on the 9th floor of it, then it's like, fuck me. Although, if you want to cheat at it a little bit, you can just reload your save and restart your current floor, so kind of that can undermine the tension a little bit, but it's an option. You can do it if you want, but if you want to play legit, you can take those consequences. And here's the thing about the caves. On paper, all of this stuff sounds great, and in fact, to many people, these things are great. But for me, I just do not enjoy the cave gameplay. In fact, I find it extremely boring. Because this cave gameplay is completely antithetical to what Pikmin 1 was and what I enjoy about Pikmin. The time management, the RTS elements, the optimization, that's the stuff that really makes Pikmin fun to me. And with the caves, that kind of thing is not only non-existent, it is actively discouraged, because since the caves can be so dangerous, the best way to play them is to be as cautious as possible, very slowly creeping your way forward and making sure that you're as safe as possible. And because you don't have multiple objectives to complete or the timer to worry about, the entire concept of multitasking is completely gone. Focusing on one thing at a time is exactly what you want to be doing in these caves, and most of the time what you're going to be doing is fighting enemies, which that on its own is okay, and Pikmin 2 has added a ton of new enemy types that you're going to find in these caves, which is very cool. But personally, I don't really find the core gameplay of Pikmin to be that engaging, because really all you're doing is moving around and clicking on stuff. There is some nuance to fighting enemies and stuff, but it's not really enough to really get me into it. And so I find the caves extremely dull to go through. You just slowly creep your way forward, fight enemies, and then move on to the next floor. And it's so strange to me, like, why would they put something in Pikmin that completely wastes all of the design elements of Pikmin? Like, they added the second captain in here that allows for even more multitasking, and then you don't need to multitask at all in the caves. And really, the automated nature of the Pikmin, that exists to serve the multitasking, so you can set your Pikmin to go do one thing while you go do another, but that doesn't really exist here in the caves. And because they're procedurally generated, they can have really awkward and pointless designs sometimes, where there'll be a wall for you to break down, but then there's nothing behind it. And even if there is sometimes, what's the point of there being a wall here, because there's no time limit to worry about? Walls in Pikmin are something that's supposed to eat up time. They're a chance to multitask. You set some Pikmin onto the wall, and then you go do something else, and you come back when it's finished. But here, you can just set all of your Pikmin to destroy the wall and just watch them do it, and there's nothing to it. it just becomes a pointless obstacle that just exists for no particular reason. And the same can be said for many aspects of the core design of Pikmin. They just serve no function in the caves. It is so strange to me. And the thing about the caves is that, okay, they're very weird and they're very different and they don't really play like Pikmin, but that's okay. There's still plenty of good old-fashioned traditional Pikmin gameplay that you can get on the surface world here. But the problem is the amount of cave gameplay in Pikmin 2. And Pikmin 1, that's a game you can beat in maybe 3 or 4 hours, and Pikmin 2 probably has a comparable amount of surface gameplay, maybe a little bit more, but Pikmin 2 in general is like a 20-hour plus long game to beat because there is so much cave gameplay. There are at least like 3, 4, 5 caves per area, and each of them can take quite a while. You know, some of them are only like 5 floors, and you can get them done in maybe 15, 20 minutes. But then there are caves that are over 10 floors long and just drag on and on and on forever. And that makes sense for the design of the caves, that they have that kind of endurance gameplay. Can you last over 10 floors without losing all of your Pikmin? But god, it eats up so much of the playtime. Probably like 10% of Pikmin 2's playtime is playing Pikmin, and 90% of it is playing these caves. And I imagine all of this playtime is part of the reason the caves exist in the first place. I bet the first Pikmin game got a lot of criticism for being so short, and so the Pikmin 2 team was like, okay, how can we extend the playtime? Let's create these procedurally generated dungeons that take fucking forever, and that will really extend the playtime of Pikmin 2. I think that's probably why they reused the levels from Pikmin 1, because they were busy focusing on making these caves to really stretch out that playtime as much as possible. And if that was the goal, then sure, the caves definitely succeeded at extending the playtime of this Pikmin game, but it didn't actually extend the amount of Pikmin you play in this Pikmin game. All of the stuff that I love about Pikmin, you barely get to do in Pikmin 2, because the whole thing is dedicated to these goddamn caves. And that is why I do not like Pikmin 2. I just do not enjoy the caves, and they are the primary focus of the game. Like I said, the caves are very, very divisive, and there are a number of Pikmin fans that do enjoy the caves, so I'm not going to say that they're bad, but they are not for me. I do not like them. I do not want to play a mediocre dungeon crawler in a Pikmin game. I want to play Pikmin. Honestly, when you look at the overall design of the game and how little traditional Pikmin gameplay there is, there's really not even much of a purpose of it having limited time on the days anymore. I mean, first of all, this game doesn't even have a limited number of days, so the whole concept of efficiency and time management, it really doesn't do anything anymore. Sure, you can still go for a minimum number of days to complete the game, but when so much of the game is not even functioning on a timer, that really feels very hollow this time around. I honestly feel like the whole concept of running out of time in your day and you gotta get back to your base and all that, it's only in Pikmin 2 because it's a Pikmin game. With the way this game is designed, it really doesn't serve any purpose. You could have removed it, and it probably would have made the game better. I mean, I'm glad it's there, so I can still get some modicum of traditional Pikmin gameplay here, but when you look at the overall design of the game, it's really pointless. What I'd really like to see one day is some modder to take Pikmin 2 and remove the caves from it. Just take out all the cave entrances and replace them with purple and white flowers and a couple extra treasures, and modify the amount of money you get for all of the surface treasures, so that way you can totally complete the game just with the traditional normal Pikmin gameplay. If someone made a mod like that, then I would fucking love Pikmin 2, but the Pikmin 2 that currently exists, yeah, no thanks. I didn't even finish this playthrough because I just don't like this video game. I beat it the first time I played through the game, and I was kind of just like sticking with it, going, please get good eventually, and it never got good. And so this time around, once I started to get really, really bored, I just stopped playing the game. And I don't imagine I'm going to be going back to Pikmin 2 anytime soon. So yeah, that's Pikmin 2. To me, it almost doesn't even feel like a Pikmin game because of how little the Pikmin gameplay is a part of it. It feels like they wanted to make a Pikmin game for people that didn't like Pikmin, so they're like, okay, all of the gameplay from the first game, that's now like the little side thing that you do occasionally in this dungeon crawler. And because of that, I'm honestly very concerned about Pikmin 4. Overall, the game looks fantastic, but it's also bringing back caves, which makes me go, oh man, am I gonna fucking hate this Pikmin game too? I hope not. I hope they manage to make the caves more tolerable for people like me. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. So that's enough complaining about Pikmin 2. Next up is gonna be Pikmin 3, which is a game that doesn't have caves, so I'm looking forward to that. It's actually my first time ever playing through Pikmin 3, so until then, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to support me, there's links to my Patreon and Ko-fi in the description. I'll see you next time.